Hi everyone, David Blakey here with the third of the 3 Getting Started videos. This one is entitled Python Getting Started Writing and Running Programs. In the previous video I showed you the interactive command prompt for Python, which is a very useful tool, but the vast majority of our programs will be written using the method I'm about to describe, which is to save your Python code in a text file and then run the text file using the Python interpreter. So what are the steps? The overview is we're going to open a plain text editor, and you have to make sure that it is plain text and not formatted text. The second step will be to write the Python code, and the third, save it in a known location, like for example the desktop. Then next, to change the permissions on the file, and that's for Unix or Mac only. Windows, it won't be required. And then finally, to open a terminal prompt, open a terminal, locate the file, and run using Python. So the overview is that we store our Python code in a text file, and then we simply feed the text file to the Python interpreter. It's a very simple process, and as I say, the vast majority of the code we write will be done this way. This is how we write and run our Python programs. So let's do this. I'm going to show you the Mac way. The Unix way will be very, very similar. And the Windows way will be a little less similar, but hopefully you'll be able to either wing it, or I might be able to show you the Windows way in a separate video. Basically, we need to start with a text editor. And if you're on the Mac, the obvious choice to begin is TextEdit. It's a program I have right here. TextEdit can be found on the Mac in the Applications folder. Here it is right here. I could execute it right here, but it's already running. I also like, because I use it so often, I like to take the TextEdit and put it into the dock. That's just so that it's easily available. Then we want to start a new text file. Now notice that unlike the other program, text file that I wrote right here, we have a formatting bar at the top of the window. This is an indicator to you that TextEdit is going to attempt to write formatted text and save your text that you write with formatting information. For example, we could say hello world, and then we could bold part of it. This is all, or we could maybe make it right justified. This is formatted text. It's what you may be used to if you've used Word or some other formatted text editor. And it's something that we don't want. We don't want formatting information about our text file stored with the Python program, because Python won't know how to interpret it. We just want to feed plain text to Python. Whatever we do here, if it's a Python program, we want it to be plain text. So how do we do that? Well, within TextEdit, you can simply say make plain text. And as you can see, when we make plain text after a warning, it gives us just the text, right? Just the text and only the text with no formatting. Of course, they're using a particular font, but that's just for display purposes. Anything we save here will be the entire document, and no additional formatting information will be saved here. Now you can change the TextEdit preferences so that any new document will be plain text. That I find the most convenient because I don't really need TextEdit to give me formatted text. I just use it for plain text. So I set the default so that any new program, any new script that I write, or any new text file that I write will be in plain text. Once you've made sure that your file is in plain text, you can proceed to write your Python code. Now, if you're in if you're in Unix or the Mac operating system, which is the same thing, you're going to want to start with a shebang line. The shebang line is the first line of your script, the first line of your text file, and it needs to be at the very top and to the very left of the text file. And it needs to begin with what we call shebang, that is a shell mark, or what's called a hash mark, and then a exclamation point, which is also known as a bang. After the shebang is a path, as you can see. This is the path to Python. I can open up a terminal window here and show you that if I went ahead and said user bin Python, do you recognize this? It's the Python command interpreter. It's the same thing we got as when we just typed Python, right? The Python command interpreter, which is what we get if we just invoke Python without any other arguments. We could also say user bin Python-v and see the version. So you can see that this path here is the same path that we use to access Python. And it's designed specifically to allow Unix, or the Unix shell, to know that when we execute this script, it should be using Python. And we'll discuss this a little further in a moment. So after typing the shebang line and a blank line, we're now free to type whatever Python code we'd like. We can say a equals 5 and b equals 10, and we can say print the value is, say b. Now, I'm not going to go into some of the elements of code that I have here. I simply want to show you a piece of Python code and show you how Python programs are written. Our most basic code is going to be the Hello World app, but I'm just showing you Hello World with, let's say, the value of b. So what are we doing now? We're now on step 2, which is writing our Python code, and now we want to save it. Now we've written our code and we want to save it. So where do we save it? Well, we can save it anywhere, but what I usually like to do is save it in the desktop. The desktop will give us a location that we can easily find either on our own Mac desktop or where is it? Or through, when we want to access it elsewhere through the Finder, we can use the desktop. So I usually like to save things in the desktop just for convenience. And then I can create my Python file name by saying, let's say, firstprog.py. .py extension is required for any Python program that you write. Now it's been saved as firstprog.py, and if I wish, I can use the Mac Finder to locate it. If I go to the desktop, you can see there it is, firstprog.py. So that's the third step, to save it as a Python program. Saving it as a Python program means adding the .py extension. I should let you know that this is still just a text file. The text file is simply plain text that's been written into a plain text file. I've given it a py extension, and that gives us a few different advantages. First off, it shows ourselves and other humans that this is a Python program. Secondly, sometimes operating systems make use of extensions to identify the program. If you look very closely, you may notice the icon just before firstprog here, and you may not recognize this. It's also in the Finder. It's a little Python logo. It shows that Mac OS understands that with the py extension, this is a Python program. That can be useful later on. So saving our file is the third step. The fourth step is to change permissions on the file. Now, changing permissions means that you're telling the operating system, this is the Unix operating system, that it's okay to execute this file. Unix, if you're not familiar with it, has a number of permissions. It has a permission scheme that's based around the privileges of reading, writing, and executing a file. We're interested in being able to read and execute the file, and we're also interested in making sure that everyone can do this. Without going into any more detail, I'll show you how to change the permissions on the file. You need to open up a terminal window, and you need to find the file. Now, we saved our file on the desktop. If you're not familiar with Unix, I'm not going to be able to fully explain what you need to do, but basically we need to change the directory, the current directory of the command line to the desktop. I'm going to do that from this home directory by saying cd desktop. That may or may not work for you depending on where you're sitting when you first open up your terminal window. Again, this isn't a class on Unix, so I'm not really going to be able to help you with that. You'll need to do a fair amount of additional work to get yourself up to speed in Unix. If you're already familiar with it, of course, you won't need to. Once I've CD'd into the desktop and the Unix prompt tells me that I'm in the desktop, and I do an ls, let's see, to see that firstprog.py is there in the current directory, I can now execute my chmod command. Of course, chmod is not going to work if Python can't find your program. One common misconception is that if the program or the script that the file that you're referencing is not in the current directory, that the operating system will go look for it. By executing this command, chmod 755 firstprog.py, we're assuming that the operating system can find firstprog.py. Firstprog.py is in the current directory. It's in the present working directory. You can see that because we listed the files in the present working directory and we saw firstprog. So if we weren't in the correct directory, we'd see no such file or directory, right? But if we go into the correct directory, we can go ahead and execute that command and it will work. Now we don't get any result, but a silent result means that Unix had no problem executing this command and it was successful. Chmod 755 basically sets the permissions for firstprog.py so that it's world readable and world executable. World meaning anyone. Anyone who logs on to this computer or uses this computer can now read or execute this file. Without it, we would get a permission denied if we tried to execute the file. So that's the fourth step, chmodding the file, that is changing the mode of the file or changing the permissions of the file so that it's world readable and world executable, which is done through 755. I could go into more detail about chmod, but as I say, this is not a Unix course, so I won't. That's simply what you need to do. Finally, you need to open up another terminal window, locate the file, and run using Python. Now, you don't need to, at this point, open up a new window. We've chmodded it, and we're in the same directory as the file, and so we can go ahead and execute it. Let's do it by invoking Python, but instead of just saying Python by itself, which would get us the command line interpreter, we'll say, let's quit out of here, we'll say Python firstprog.py. What we're saying here is first execute Python and then pass to Python the name of the file that we'd like to be executed. Remember that firstprog.py has Python text in it, Python commands in it. These are the same Python commands that we could have used in the interactive interpreter, but now we're creating a text file that has several Python commands in it, lines of code that tell Python what to do. Assign the integer 5 to A, the integer 10 to B, print hello world, and then print another string with the value of B concatenated to it. We'll go into more of this later. This is our Python code, and it begins with the shebang line, and then from the command line, what we're doing here is we're invoking Python and then sending to it the name of the file that we'd like to see executed. So we say Python firstprog.py, and we get an error. Beautiful. Okay, what does it say? Firstprog.py line 6 in module. Well, okay, let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like the error may have occurred here. I think, not sure if there's actually a way. I don't think there's a way necessarily to show the line numbers, but it is good to work with a text editor that shows line numbers. In this case, we're not doing that because I'm showing you the most basic way to work. Here's the 6th line. I counted from the top. The value of B is B. What does the error say? Okay, there it is. It actually shows us the line and then says, cannot concatenate string int objects. This is something we're going to go into later, but basically we need to convert B to a string, and we do that this way. Again, there's no need to go into detail here. I'm just trying to show you how all this works. We save this file again after changing it, and now we can try running it again. And we get hello world, the value of B is 10. Perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. Now, I wanted to show you that we were feeding firstprog to Python. But the last thing that I'll show you is that we don't actually need to invoke Python here. We can actually execute the script directly. In Unix work, we have to say // That's simply indicating the current directory. In the current directory, execute firstprog.py. That's what we're doing now. We're executing the script directly. We actually changed the permissions of the script so that we could execute it directly. And when we do that, we get the same result. It executes firstprog.py. But how does Python, how does the operating system, Unix, know to execute the script using Python? We didn't mention Python to the operating system. So how does it know? Does it use the extension? Actually, no. It doesn't use the extension to identify the Python program, at least not in this case. Instead, what it does is it uses the shebang line. The shebang line says, hey, I'm a Python program and I should be executed using this. What we did is really, by using the shebang line, we did the same thing as if we had said user bin Python firstprog.py. Do you see we're invoking Python in the same way we did before, and then we're passing to it one argument, which is the name of the script that we want executed, firstprog. And we get the same result. But of course, we also get the same result by executing the script directly, using the / syntax. Why is that? Because user bin Python is here in the shebang line. This is something that Unix does. It's something that what we call the shell does to execute the script. If we say execute this file directly and it looks and sees that it's a text file, the first thing it does is look at the first line to see where there's a shebang line, if there's a shebang line there. If there is one, it uses Python to execute it. Great. So from now on, what we'll be able to do is add a shebang line to every one of our scripts, which we should always do. And then secondly, chmod the file using chmod 755, and then the name of the file. And then thirdly, execute the file directly, as we're doing here. So we execute the file directly, and again, the shell looks at the first line, that is the Unix operating system, looks at the first line, says, oh, it's a Python program. Oh, I see. I need to feed this into user bin Python. And it itself really converts this type of command into user bin Python and then the name of the script. So that's how we execute our scripts. Now, if you're working on Windows, the steps are going to be similar, but just a tiny bit different. Really, the steps are going to be very, very similar. Within Windows, you're going to open up a plain text editor. In Mac OS X, as I mentioned, you're going to be using TextEdit. And in Windows, you're going to be using something called Notepad. Now, these are basic suggestions for programs that you already have. As you progress as a Python programmer, or if you're already an experienced programmer and you want to use some other method, you'll be moving on to other text editors that do the same job, but they do it a little more elegantly or a little more usefully, a little more thoughtfully. There are many text editors, for example, that know what a Python program is. They know what Python syntax is, and so you may want to move to those eventually. For right now, I'm just showing you the basics with programs that you already have. Mac OS TextEdit is one way, and it needs to be plain text. Windows Notepad also needs to be plain text, but it is by default. Then you're going to write your Python code and save it to a known location. It's really going to be the same in Windows as it is here. It'll be the same in flavors of Unix as it is here. It'll just be slightly different when you're working with the operating system. And lastly, as I mentioned before, the chmod 755 is not necessary within Windows, right? We can just say not Windows. Not Windows this command is not necessary within Windows. So you'll skip this step. And then finally, open up a terminal window. Of course, in Windows, it's known as an MS-DOS window or a command prompt window. And then go ahead and locate the file and run it using Python. So let me know if you have any questions, and in particular, if you have any comments about this video and its usefulness. Thanks very much for listening.